Hi, everybody. Nice to have folk watching, and hope you'll enjoy this chat. It's the third in a series of discussions about our Antarctica expedition plans for next year in March, and we've already discussed in quite a bit of detail photography and the photographic challenges associated with Antarctica as a frontier with our photography guide, Jay Rueda. And then a few weeks ago, Pierre Duval, a private guide colleague, and myself just had a chat about our fascination with the topic and are looking forward to collaborating and guiding together this particular voyage and expedition in Antarctica next year. And so the logical move now is to move across to a good mate and beloved colleague of mine, and a collaborator on many safaris, Prof. Peter Neville. Peter's an ethology guide and a professor in animal behavior. And Peter and I have been co-guiding specialist safaris across the length and breadth of Africa for the last 5 or 6 years. Tanzania, Madagascar, Namibia several times. We've got plans afoot to get into Ethiopia and Uganda, and we've been in South Africa a great deal. And Peter is not just a great safari companion. We have oodles of fun together in guiding and hosting these various trips, but he has an amazing way of discussing ethology or behavioral scenarios surrounding the animals we're watching that folk just can't get enough of. And very early on, I decided that we had to get Peter on the back of a Land Rover and on icebreakers going down to Antarctica to tell us what he knows as we view some of these incredible creatures. So Peter, welcome to a chat about Antarctica from a behavioral perspective, and I'm really looking forward to sharing a boat with you and with our clientele next year, March.
Yeah, boats is going to make a lot of difference, isn't it? Land Rovers are one thing. We're in charge of driving them, but the boat, you're in the hands of the skipper, I guess.
Indeed.
But it gives us time. It gives us time to go and see all this amazing wildlife. A wilderness that I haven't been to. I'm so looking forward to going. We all remember, this ice bucket challenge a few years back. That wasn't cold enough for me. That didn't do anything for me. I live in Finland. That's for amateurs. I want to get down to the Antarctic, and I've been in Chile. I've been in Patagonia. I've been up to the glaciers and collected the ice and taken it back to the boat. And that's what you pour your gin on or your scotch. And that's what I want to do. That's my ice bucket challenge.
There you go.
Let's go and see some great stuff and bring your own ice back. So,
fabulous.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
No, great. I think it's going to be something really special. And I mean, it is a very specialized wildlife habitat, largely aquatic. Even the terrestrial bird life and mammals that we'll see there spend a great deal of their time in the water as well. And so there's this array of really interesting creatures that live on this frontier. You and I were chatting penguins a little while back. I mean, there's a really crazy, innocuous, at times quite aggressive group of birds.
Yeah. Well, who doesn't love penguins? We've been, if you've got kids, you've been assaulted by Pingu for many years, and all sorts of other guys. The guys in the films Madagascar, I mean,
Happy feet.
They're charming. They're so attractive. We've got 3 species down in the Antarctic to go and have a look at: the Adélie, the chinstrap, and the gentoo. The gentoo, I think, is a nice guy. He's got that swishy tail as he walks along. He's cute. He's quite tough. He's smaller only than the emperor and the king penguin, so he's quite a big guy. But the sweet thing about him is that he's monogamous.
Okay.
So they're made for life, and there are accounts of individuals who have become naughty boys and become unfaithful, who've been banished from the colony. So they seem to have some kind of moral stance, which I like to go and see. It's nice to see that kind of thing. But of the three, I think my favorite has to be the Adelie, because this is the bad boy of penguins. Only found in Antarctica, about 4 million breeding pairs. I mean, can you imagine what that looks like?
Enormous colonies,
Just
yeah.
enormous. Yeah, quite small, only up to about 6 kilos, but very dapper in their tuxedos. I mean, if it's not too much of a crossover, they are the lounge lizards of the penguin family, because they're also completely deceitful. These guys. I've got a report here which I'll read you from the early, famous Scott expedition from 1910. And a chap called Apsley Cherry Garrard. I mean, you only got names like that in the British Empire, didn't you, really?
Indeed.
Anyway, he documented details of the Adelie penguin behavior in a book called The Worst Journey in the World.
Okay.
Now, we're going to, do the opposite of that and have the best journey in the world.
One hopes, yes.
But we will have a warm boat and a stocked bar,
Yes.
Anyway, he wrote, they are extraordinarily like children, these little people of the Antarctic world, either like children or like old men, full of their own importance. Young penguins with no experience in social interaction often react to false cues when they gather to breed. Another guy, Dr. George Murray Levick, saw this in 1911-12, but his notes were deemed too indecent for publication at the time with the official Scott expedition notes. The frequency of sexual activity, autoerotic behavior, and seemingly aberrant behavior of young unpaired males and females, including necrophilia, sexual coercion, sexual and physical abuse of chicks, and homosexual behavior.
Goodness gracious.
The notes were finally published in 2012 by authors who said that the observations were accurate, valid, and with the benefit of hindsight, deserving of publication. So, we're on some kind of a trip here. I mean, who thought it? Who thought it? Everyone thinks of penguins as jolly decent chaps who, sit there and share the care and nurturing of the egg and the chick. And it's all, it all looks, hard, but beautifully well organized and socially responsible. And then you've got these Adelie penguins who are something else, right?
Unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah, and yet, those strategies must work, because between 1964 and 2014, there was a 53% increase in their population.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
That's crazy.
That's huge.
And it seems to be because the intense hunting of fur seals and the baleen whales, which we'll come back to, caused a massive increase in the number of, or the volume, perhaps is a better word, of krill that was available. And the Adelies switched their diet to basically just feeding on krill because it was so abundant.
Yeah.
And that seems to explain this huge increase.
Fascinating.
Yeah. But there's something else I wanted to talk to you about with the Adelies. I'm so glad I met up with you and we do, nice safaris, because I think my days of being a biologist, out in the field are done. Because in 2014, satellite analysis of fresh guano discolored red-brown coastal areas revealed these, 3.8 million breeding pairs of these Adelie penguins. And someone has to sit there and analyze all of that.
Yeah.
That amount of guano. That's a young researcher's job, not mine.
Absolutely. No, that's really, that's amazing. So an enormous sort of growth in that particular population over the last while. That's fabulous.
Yeah. I mean, it's winners and losers. I mean, most things down there, of course, have been hunted, or threatened by climate change, or getting entangled in fishing gear or whatever. And so most populations down there were under some pretty serious threat, at least until there were bans or moratoriums on hunting.
Right. Well, whales spring to mind almost immediately, and I mean, I'm aware of a diving story you've had with a particular species. And that, I think, triggered a fascination in that particular marine group of mammals. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's one of those experiences that live with you forever. Much like when you and I first encountered that leopard who went on after a couple of hours to go and mate right in front of us with his,
Yes.
with his lady friend. And, you know, these things live with you. But this goes back a time I was in Tonga, and when you were allowed then to go out into the open sea, jump off a boat and snorkel with a whale right beneath you. And the idea was, you know, you'd get reasonably close, but not too close. And then the whale, which would, you know, if it was a female, would have a calf, would surface quite frequently, so the calf could breathe. And so, you know, there I was in the water with a few other people, but, you know, I got a little bit caught in the drift. And when Mrs. Whale decided to come up, I was, you know, caught in the turbulence kind of thing. What I do remember is, you know, apart from being a little bit frightened, was being able to stare right into her eye, you know. And I got this this lovely model of a carving from a Tongan guy to remind me of that incident. And it is, you know, absolutely enthralling. It's really why we're all naturalists and why we're all biologists. I'm pretty sure that you're not allowed to go doing that sort of thing now because, you know,
I don't think so. No.
But I'm really looking forward to you know, meeting whales again, and I really hope, you know, we've got 4 baleen whales down there to hopefully encounter. We've got the minke whale, which was named after the mispronunciation of a Norwegian guy whose name was Mainka.
Okay,
it's funny where these names come from, right?
Yeah.
We've got the right whale, and you think, well, why? How does an animal get a name like that? And it comes from whaling.
That's right.
Right whales are slow, and so they were easy to harpoon, and when they were dead, they float. So they were called the right ones to go. It was
the right one to get. Yeah.
It meant their demise was kind of sealed. And then you've got the sei whales, and of course, you know, the big guy, the blue whale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who doesn't want to see a blue whale? You're an ornithologist. You like to tip birds everywhere. Yes. Well, I like to tip, you know, massive animals.
It's a species that I've longed to see as well. So I think you and I are on the same page there. It'd be lovely to catch a glimpse of one, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking up some information about them. I mean, these, you know, you and I are very used to sitting in big herds of elephants, and these guys, one blue whale can weigh up to 220 tons, as much as 30 elephants.
Wow, 30
you know,
elephants.
6 tons of an elephant, 30 elephants. You know,
goodness.
As long as 3 buses lined up, the tongue weighs as much as an elephant. I mean, this is the biggest animal that has ever lived. You know? And you know, we nearly killed all of them, and yet, you know, they're back now. They reckon, you know, they think they might have got down to even 360 left, but they now think, you know, there might be 10 to 25,000, so that they are recovering. But yeah, can you imagine?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I mean, did you know also blue whales are the loudest animals on the planet?
I didn't know that.
I mean, neither did I, you know, but apparently a jet engine goes out at, where do I have it here? Where has it gone? Oh yeah, a jet engine registers at 140 decibels. The call of a blue whale reaches 188.
Wow.
And their repertoire of pulses, of groans and moans can be heard up to 1,000 miles away by other whales.
Gracious.
So, you know,
phenomenal.
While we're sitting on our boat or getting in our little pontoon boats and going out across the ice, you know, we're going to be seeing things, and we'll certainly hear lots of penguins. But I hope that some of the researchers will be able to drop some, you know, some sonar equipment in the water so we can hear all of that's going on under there, because the seals are all vocal, and the whales, yes. You know.
No, that'll be fabulous. I mean, absolutely. I think that's one of the things I was hoping for as well. So yeah, penguins, whales, got some interesting seals there as well. I mean, one of the big sort of apex carnivores in the bays on the peninsula is the good old leopard seal.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that ties us up very nicely. You know, we're African folk, and now we're going to see a seal that's got the same spotty coat as a leopard, you know, and named for it. So, yeah, again, you know, a real animal, you know, a real predator here, up to 600 kilograms. You know, where do you start? I mean, the there's about 1 million of them. I mean,
Wow.
that's the first thing that strikes you. How do you get to be 1 million? Well, but they're supreme predators. They eat all sorts of things. They eat fish. They've got 1 inch long canine teeth, so they're fish are easy, so mobile and streamlined underwater. But their molars are actually designed like sieves, like the balines of the baleen whales. That
Yes.
they filter krill out of the water. So they're actually not very good at killing things. If the bite doesn't kill, they're a bit helpless. And yet, of course, they're still chasing after everything. I mean, they kill penguins. They eat penguins.
Yes.
They can catch them. But if the bite doesn't kill the penguin, they have to take them up to the surface and basically batter them to death on the top of the water.
Incredibly violent. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they can't chew them. They can't split them. So they just have to throw them around until the penguin falls to bits, and then they go around hoovering up the bits.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's nature in tooth and claw and everything else down there.
Seals are pretty depraved. You've just described killing. I mean, Weddell's is a commonish seal on the peninsula as well. They've got some pretty despicable behavior as well, particularly in the water.
Yeah, well, it's like a lot of mammals. The definition of courtship is a little bit brutal. Weddell seals mate underwater, and if the female gets away, she gets noshed. She gets bitten until she basically submits. And it's it's the same. When the females reach a certain age, they gather into groups, and that enables the males to basically construct a harem. And they defend their harems against other males, but they're brutal. Most of the scars and the fight wounds are on each other's genitals. So it's this is not a nice scenario if you're of a delicate nature. But Indeed. What you have to say is that according to the rules of nature and Darwin and everything else, this is what works. This is what works.
Absolutely.
This niche.
That's the recipe for that particular species, and that's what works in terms of natural selection. Yeah.
And some of the interesting things we see in some mammals, like impala, as we were talking about, is that the implantation of a fertilized egg is delayed after mating to coincide with when food and circumstances food is available and circumstances are better. And Weddell seal does that. Okay. So there's this sort of frenetic mating period, November, December, and then the young aren't born until it's warmer and there's more food around, basically.
Wow.
So interesting.
Lots of interesting stuff. It's a large buffet of brand new stuff that we're going to be showcasing, and it's and learning about. It's time can't travel fast enough.
And what impresses a female Weddell seal is the size of the male, his diving ability, wouldn't you just know it, and his knowledge of the area.
Okay.
If he's familiar to the area, then the girls are chasing him, basically.
Okay. Wow.
So yeah.
Fascinating.
There's quite a lot known about these guys because they're quite curious, and I expect we'll see quite a lot. And so they've tended to come up and have a look at some of the stations that have been established down there. So the researchers get a lot of data. They get to study them a lot, whereas the leopard seals are a bit harder to find.
Right. Fantastic, Peter. I so looking forward to it, man. You had a Shackleton related story that we were chatting about earlier.
I did. Which one was that? Find my notes here. What was it to do with? Oh yeah. Well, it was to do actually with the leopard seal.
Leopard seals. That's right.
I mean, they are apex predators, so potentially they present a risk to people. But the first recorded victim was a guy called Thomas Ord Leese. We're back to the British upper classes, I guess. A member of Shackleton's first expedition down there, and he was chased by one and was struggling to get away, even on the ice.
Wow.
And he only really escaped when a colleague saw his distress and came out and shot the seal.
Goodness.
But more sad than that was that in 2003, a biologist from the British Antarctic Survey was actually killed while snorkeling out of one of the stations. And her colleagues, saw how she was killed, which was she was basically held underwater for 6 minutes at 70 meters, and died from a total of 45 injuries, mainly around the head and neck. So I mean, these guys are efficient,
they're efficient, and they get the job done. They're mean. Yeah. Wow. By a seal.
We don't mess with lions. We don't mess with lions. We don't mess with leopards, and we're not going to mess with leopard seals.
Indeed not.
And this is relevant because they've also been recorded as attacking the pontoons on the side of inflatable boats. You're on rigid inflatable boats when we come off our boat. Yeah. And apparently they'll go for those as if they're smaller seals or fur seals or something.
Wow.
So, don't worry, we will have protective guards.
No, we will. It'll all be quite safe. But yeah, I mean, it is a wildlife ecosystem, efficient and savage, and brutal at times. And these are there's predators in that space like any other, orcas as well. So absolutely, it's tantamount to being on safari. We're just in a different habitat with different players. That's really essentially the difference.
Yeah, it's a nice safari.
Yeah,
it's going to be good. I've got a little bit about orcas because I think for everybody, this is the animal they really want to see. And if you've never seen one, up to 6 tons of predator. I guess more people will have seen them in SeaWorld and other places.
Inside Passage cruises, etc. Yeah, they're quite widely distributed around the world, more so than some of the others.
Yeah, they're all over. And interestingly, the only time they're recorded as having injured anybody are actually in these theme parks. So they're not they have the second largest brain of any mammal. They reckon there's about 50,000 left, of which half, so 25,000, are in the Antarctic. They do prefer to be down that way. We've seen the fabulous documentaries where they wave surf to get the seal off the little piece of ice, that he thought he was safe on, and they gather around and coordinate and flush him off the ice, poor fella. But dramatic and really smart. I mean, cooperative, strategic hunting. And they are fantastic. There's some discussion going on about how many species there are, or types. The old taxonomy problem. We're always laughing about it. There was
subspecies. Yeah.
But 3 of the 4, if you like, are found in the Antarctic, particularly. And they're so social. They live in pods, family groups of matrilines of 1 to 4 females who are the matriarchs, if you like, and they're stable. And really, there's only elephants and primates that live in a more complex group. Yeah. And these pods, they can separate off for weeks or months and then come back together again. But the interesting thing, which would be interesting, well, I think of note to you as a Scotsman of old, is that they get into clans. Now, I don't think they have a tartan, but they do have a social structure. And interestingly, their language is in a dialect. Wow. So each clan has its own dialect, like a Scottish accent or a Welsh accent or an African accent.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, and then they have communities, which are sets of clans that get together, but they can't understand each other, which is kind of like, where I come from, Britain. There's all these different accents everywhere, and you get too far away from home and you can't understand a word someone's saying, but it's still English. If you wrote it down, it's exactly the same. So, really fascinating. And they have, transient pods and resident pods, and the males, to avoid inbreeding, migrate between pods. So they share the DNA around to keep the genetic spread. So, fascinating. They're what have I got here? They're actually a member of the dolphin family. So they communicate with clicks and this sort of sonar system. A resident pod uses a local dialect of 7 to 11 distinctive call types, patterns, and structures, which are distinctive down the female lines. And calves produce similar calls to their mothers, but a little bit more limited in expression. But they learn the dialect through the contact with their pod. So this is passing down generations. This isn't just a couple of animals who happen to hook up. This is over history. It's culture, if you like, which fantastic, absolutely
unreal.
Fantastic. And
unreal.
They're also protected now after excessive hunting, would you believe,
yeah.
down there, and nobody really hunts them anymore.
Fantastic, Bwana. We could do this all afternoon, but I think we're gonna end it there. Suffice it to say, for those folk that are still interested in joining us, we have some space. Departure is the 8th of March, 2022. Information is all on the website, www.raesafaris.co.za. And Peter and I will both be there, along with Pierre Duval and Jay Rueda, to handle photography guiding and animal behavior focused input, the likes of which we've just heard a little bit about from Peter now. And it's going to be an incredible experience and the voyage of a lifetime. And yeah, we have some space. There's been an extension. Thank you, our partners in Antarctica. There's been an extension on the early bird discount, 15%. So for those that are interested, you've got just a few short weeks before the gate closes on that. And if you'd like to join us, now's as good a time as any to secure your spot. Peter, thank you very much. As ever, it's been brilliant, and yeah, looking forward.
Hey, I've got to do a lot more reading before we get there, and hey, I think it should be an early penguin discount, really.
Yeah, great idea. We'll change the name immediately. Fantastic. We'll be chatting to Christina Mason and Angie Butler from Ice Tracks on the final of these series on Antarctica. Our partners, our operational partners on these voyages, and yeah, we can't wait. Much obliged, Prof. I look forward to getting down there with you and having a look around. Be great.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Thanks very much.